So we should be live. I think we're live. We're live,
We are
right?
live.
Yeah.
We're live.
Yay!
Dun,
Oh,
dun, dun,
I
dun.
might not I might not come through as loudly and clearly as normal because I'm dealing with a lot of nebula interference in Los Angeles with the. I guess I'll blame it on the crazy weather they're having. I was like, man, my first day in LA and it's like snowing on me at Vasquez Rocks. Like that's not what I was led to believe I would encounter in the city most famous for being a sunny place in the United States. But
seems like the
it is what it
Genesis
is, right?
effect is causing the planet to accelerate in its aging process.
So true.
But yes, I am returning from the Star Trek cruise, so still trying to find my way back to the Alpha Quadrant. But we have a new episode of Picard to talk about, so we had to get the band together and do a show while I'm mid travels. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Really big episode, some big exciting developments. I'm curious what everyone's going to say about some of the stuff. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get the show started. I think I'm gonna have Starfleet boy engineer helping out here in a moment. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and kick things off now. I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Starfleet boy.
I'm Rachel.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
I meant to say Starfleet so hail.
Well,
It's too late.
We're
No takebacks.
all transitioning to the new identity, the rebranding, the great rebranding of Starfleet Sohel. Like when Enterprise became Star Trek Enterprise all of a sudden
That's
in
exact-
season 3.
That's exactly
What?
it
This
is.
show was Star Trek all these seasons? I didn't know that. But yeah, so this is going to be a lot of fun. For those who didn't hear, I am currently traveling back. I'm returning back to Texas from the Star Trek cruise. So yeah, my audio might sound a little different. If you're watching the video, you might not see me. You might see a presentation of me, which currently I think on screen is me in Klingon makeup from a few years ago. So hope everyone enjoys looking at that. But
Father, you're recording
but
from
yeah,
inside like a
welcome
bathroom.
back on.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same
Does it
thing.
sound like
That's
I'm in a
fine.
bathroom?
A
I'm
little bit.
actually.
I don't know.
in,
I
like,
haven't heard a flush,
Am
but
I'm in a really large hotel room that's like so. It's like freaks me out. It's so big. It's not like fancy or anything. It's like very plain hardwood floor, old drywall walls. But it's just a very large room with like this little tiny bed in it. It's a little weird.
Okay, I see why that's freaking you out. I don't like the sound of that.
Father, I stayed at a fancy hotel.
Yeah. So sorry if my audio cuts out, but I think we'll be able to make it. Yes, if I do
we'll try and
vanish,
keep it
then
rolling.
The rest of the panel here will just keep things rolling right along. But in the meantime, though, welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 232nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new. And tonight we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 2. I'm sorry, Episode 3, 17 Seconds. And that was written by some Season 2 veterans, right? Yeah, written by Jane Maggs and Cindy Appel, and directed by Jonathan Frakes himself. So we will get into that in just a moment. Am I sounding okay right now?
You're fine.
Every
Am I,
once in a while,
choppy
there's
or
like a
anything?
little bit of, there's a little light acoustic weirdness, like slight
Yeah.
echoey effects, but it's pretty low level. It
Yeah,
just sounds a
nothing
little
crazy.
different.
Oh, well, Dave, since you probably sound a little bit more clear than I do, you want to remind everyone what episode we're watching in the Patreon watch party on March 18th?
Yes, maybe. Literally, I was just talking about it with Rachel a second ago, and I already forgot the name of it, though.
May
Way
I
of the
step
I
in?
know
Warrior.
that's the
Oh,
only
there you
reason
go.
why I asked, because
Because you wanted to humiliate
it's the
me?
only reason why I asked, because no, because
This
I
is
just
what it's
heard
like
you
to
say
be
it a
Shaw.
second ago. Like,
This-
oh yeah, Way of
This
the
is
Warrior.
what it's like to be Shaw, y'all. Is there any more weird shit you want to throw at me?
Oh my god, I love
Way
that.
of the Warrior.
Yes. But yeah, we're going to
Yeah,
be
so that's
watching
gonna
our
be on
first
March
two-parter
18th.
for it.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a Starfleet. We're gonna have all of our patrons over there. Starfleet Sohel. Got to remember he's Starfleet Sohel, but he and the rest of the gang that helps out on Patreon. That's Cake is Eternal, Gay Clevin Lunch from Crazy Dutchy, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Earl Grey Truckee, Quarks Bard, our anonymous supporters. You are all invited, as you are each and every month, to the monthly Patreon watch party. Yeah, we will be checking out Way of the Warrior coming up real soon on the 18th. Which is like 2 weeks, right? Yeah. But we do one of those every month, and you can come in as little as $2 a month. It really helps us out with the expenses of podcast hosting, website hosting, StreamYard subscription. So thank you, everyone who chips in to help us out, and it means a lot to us. And yeah, we'll be doing a watch party on the 18th. So just wanted to remind everyone about that. And we got a little bit of news yesterday about the end of Discovery coming with season 5. Now next year they've pushed it off to next year. They're I guess reshooting some things to give it make sure that it wraps everything up and comes off as a satisfying ending to the 5-year saga of Michael Burnham and the crew of the USS Discovery.
A show that somewhat launched our podcast,
So,
or anticipation of it did.
Yeah, so we started about a year before Discovery premiered, largely to track the production of that show and then to discuss the episodes of it. So yeah, it not only ushered in this modern era of direct-to-streaming Star Trek shows, but also the creation of Tex-Trek itself. Before Dave came up with our name.
Do we yet know if this is the only major outcome of their Paramount Plus's financial woes, restructuring, whatever?
Well, I wouldn't even say financial woes. Their Paramount Plus is doing a bit better than some of the other streaming services, but everyone is cutting costs at the moment. I think that with Picard ending and Discovery ending, I think that they are preparing a new I think it's only going to be one. I don't think we're going to get like Section 31 and a 25th Century and an Academy show, but I think there will be one other live action show in addition to Strange New Worlds. Probably not until 2025. Did y'all lose me?
It looks like, yeah, and no, you're here. It looks like Alex Kurtzman was teasing in Variety that it might be a Academy show set in the 32nd century. So that would be an interesting thing, and it's something I really wanted when I saw Disco 5. Yeah. Yeah, we lost Father. So yeah, you were gonna say, Rachel?
It's weird for me because Discovery is the first Trek show I watched as it aired, despite being a Trek fan for like a decade. Because I was like in middle school when Enterprise ended and lived overseas, I didn't really have access to it. And so I remember like Discovery is the thing that really brought me into the Star Trek fandom. So it's really weird to have it like leaving.
That's so sad, and also so cool that Discovery did that. And I think that's like an experience that I've at least seen a lot of, and I really love it because for me personally, Discovery season 1 and I had a real tough time getting along, but by season 2, I was like really into the show. Not just because of Captain Pike. Like Burnham, I was rooting for Burnham all the time, but just there were some disagreements with me in Discovery in season 1.
I
I would
like,
also count myself among the like. It has ups and downs, but like every time it's between seasons, I find myself missing the characters and wanting to see what they're up to.
I did like enjoy that first season of Discovery, but I think like most Star Trek shows, it has growing pains in that first season.
100%. Not only that, Discovery did the growing pains for all of Star Trek. Like all the new Star Treks kind of have like used Discovery's shoulders to kind of like build their version of Star Trek.
I would say especially Strange New Worlds. Like
Father has returned.
Yay!
Maybe.
Welcome back.
But I've also Discovery is how I've got my other friends who I've gotten many people into Star Trek by showing them Discovery, and they're like, "Oh, I want to see more." And I'm like, "You don't say. I have more to show." Like,
nice.
I find that Discovery is also the show that like once people in my work environments and like in my social life who don't know Star Trek started to see that I started letting my Star Trek freak flag fly a lot more and like posting about it and stuff. They would come up to me and talk to me about Discovery, and they were like, "We watch this show every week. It's so exciting. It's so fun." Like, and I think like mission accomplished. That's what you want. Like you want people to like come and check out Star Trek. And you know, I know there were like things that like you know, the nitpickers and the nerds in us like want to like kind of like they can like whatever, like, but think about like when you think about the larger picture of what Discovery is not only just done for Star Trek, but also just the story it's been telling is really cool. Like, you know, it's exciting to. So anyways, it's heartbreaking. Now that it's leaving.
I'm sure we'll be devoting lots of time to talking about it, its legacy, and all that.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
But I guess we'll pour one. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna pour it in myself.
Pour a Romulan ale.
I only have water, unfortunately. But
Fathery, are you indeed back?
For now.
Okay. Well, do we want to dive into the episode?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm gonna quickly recap the episode by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers, and we'll each give our opening statement on the episode, just kind of our broad thoughts and opinions, and then we'll discuss the specifics. But the official synopsis reads: Picard grapples with an explosive, life-altering revelation while the Titan and her crew try to outmaneuver a relentless Vadic in a lethal game of nautical cat and mouse. This is a colorful synopsis so far. Meanwhile, Raffi and Worf uncover a nefarious plot from a vengeful enemy Starfleet has long since forgotten. So yeah, we have some cat and mouse games in the nebula, along with the reveal of the changelings, the founders of the Dominion, Odo's people.
Well, a faction of them.
Apparently,
I finished watching DS9 just in time.
Yeah, not all of them. You're welcome. We're just now getting to March, and Dave.
What's
Dave,
that,
you've already seen like over 50 episodes of Star Trek this year, and it's just now March. Like,
that's true. I could actually die of a Trek overdose. We don't know.
Real talk. This will probably 2023 is on track to be the year you've watched the most Star Trek of your entire life.
Oh, so this is weird, Fathery, that you have statistics about my life that I don't even think about. I'm a little unnerved by it. I feel like you're stalking me.
Well, we all have our own weird obsessions. Mine is keeping up with how much Star Trek people watch.
That's fair.
When they watch it.
That's fair. When Fathery sees you, he sees little numbers floating over your head, just like you were a character in an MMO.
Well, I'm just gonna give some quick thoughts I had on this, and then I'll ask y'all what y'all think about it. But I was kind of mixed on the first episode of season 3. I loved the second episode of season 3, and I really liked this one too. I don't know if I liked it more than last week, but it's definitely like of that same caliber for me. I was just super excited to see some big DS9 connections. I thought the tension between Riker and Picard was just delightful, and both like a combination of entertaining to watch, but also almost like heartbreaking, because I'm like, oh, I'm friends with both these dudes. I don't want to see them fight. I'm a diehard Worf fan, so loved seeing some cool Worf stuff, and the show's approach to Worf, that he has grown, he has evolved. Finally, finally he showed some much needed development and improvement. I think most people would agree. And we finally get to hear from Dr. Crusher, and she has a lot of explaining to do, so we get to hear her chime in and tell her side of the story at long last. So a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm very excited about what this means for what's actually going on. It feels like there's a lot that hasn't been revealed yet, as far as who the bad guys are, what they're trying to do. All this portal weapon stuff might be some type of distraction from something bigger. So what does that mean? I don't know, but it's very enticing and exciting, and I am primed for episode 4, and very much looking forward to seeing what happens next. Dave, what about you?
I'm going to say this was a mixed to positive episode for me. I realized that I liked it most when it was what I think of as the most TNG, people talking. And the stuff I liked least was the big movie stuff, like hiding out in nebulas, which I thought was a little bit like, if not specifically nebulas, I've seen a decent number of Trek shows where people hid out in the corona of a star, or inside maybe a gas giant or something like that. And so I wasn't super into that, running chase in there, but I was very into this. What the heart of the episode for me was both Riker and Jack Crusher talking, which I want to give that a little extra credit, because I actually thought that conversation, although shorter than Picard and Beverly, I thought that was a really interesting conversation. But the Beverly and Picard one had to nail it for me, I think, to explain the 20-year absence, and to make me buy into it without feeling too much of a need to take sides. And we'll talk more about it as we get to it. But to me, they pulled it off really well, and got me on board this plot point, which really has to carry the season. So I was impressed with that. And I'm liking the forward momentum of it too. In the last episode, Picard was like, he was taking command. This one, as things kind of became a little more paralyzed between he and Riker, there was this forward momentum with Raffi and Worf's story, or Rafaela, as I really like how he calls her. And so they're like, let's go hunt some orc. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I had some issues as I was going along, but overall, this was a pretty good one for me.
Cool. Starfleet Sohel, what do you think?
I really liked this episode a lot. I had a lot of fun watching it. I was hollering at the screen. I don't know if you guys have seen the YouTuber. I forget his full. I'll try to look him up in a moment so I get his handle right, but I think it's Tweak or something like that, or Tweez, I'm not sure. Anyways, he's awesome. He reacts like very raw, like to the things that are happening, like on the screen, and like then
you're watching him do the live watch.
Yeah, and then he's like he cuts it together, cutting out all the moments where he didn't have a reaction, like a strong reaction, and like it's just delightful. But I felt like this episode did the same thing for me. I remember like kind of like being very engaged by it, haha. And the thing that like I think still is with me is it's a very powerful kind of episode, because it creates a lot of discussion because of like Dr. Crusher's and Captain Picard, Admiral Picard's like situation, and like everything surrounding it. So there's like we've uncovered something really interesting, and like so I kind of get like that synopsis where it's like it's like a big moment, right, in Star Trek. And so I'm having fun, like just kind of I think I've changed my opinion like 3 times about what the motives are, like, and all that stuff. And I really love that kind of. I think that's something that, for me, really turns me on when Star Trek can like just make me like think about things in a new way. It just like, it feels good to like expand your mind a little bit, or like just learn something new or hear a different perspective, which, by the way, I'm excited that there's a female perspective on the show, because when I did the discussion there wasn't. But yeah, I'm just really excited about this episode. I'm gonna sit on my hands a lot about things that are my opinions other than that, because I have seen the next episode, so I don't want to spoil anything, even with my reactions, because like I've never been more excited to see what other people are gonna think of something. So
you know what? You know how you should lens it, so Hale? You are like a time traveler, and you don't want to alter the flow of the future.
Exactly.
You don't want to change
things. You have to respect the temporal time directive.
I will just say that it's one last note before I pass it on to you, Rachel, is just Jonathan Frakes. I want to see. I at the same time, I'm sure that he was uninterrupted, but I would love to see a recording of him directing Sir Patrick Stewart and Gates McFadden, and then also him directing Michael Dorn and Michelle Hurd, because I know everyone loves him as a director, but these are such great scenes. These, like, Raffi saying like, you're a legend. Well, like, what's happening on screen is legendary right now. Like, we're seeing Worf, as Father beautifully put, finally something new about this character, like, which is really cool. So yeah. All right. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, Rachel, what was your broad thoughts on 17 Seconds?
I really enjoyed this episode. We were already talking about the scene with Picard and Beverly, and it's so good. And I love that her reasons are something that are reasonable. Like, you understand where she's coming from, but it's not like some big galactic thing. It's like, and it's something that obviously we're an extreme version of it. But it's like something I could see happening kind of in the real world, where if like someone's like had a child with someone who was like constantly being like kidnapped and attacked, they'd be like, hey, I don't want the world to know this is their child.
The more she went on, the more I started to think like, this is a somewhat reasonable approach, especially when she talked about the people she lost already.
I have questions about Wesley apparently never talking to his mother, though.
Yeah.
I was like, he's not dead.
Yeah.
I saw him last season.
I know.
I guess
they're so close yet so far away.
I guess she did sort of speak about it slightly ambiguously, like she lost them to the stars. At the very least, it seems like he did disappear for what may have been many years before contacting her. If he has.
And there's just so many exciting things. Like, I love how it was directed. I literally jumped up and down when I realized that was a changeling. Like, when Jack punched that dude in the face and his face did something weird, and I was like, wait. And I also, we could talk about this more later, I really like the updated changeling effect. I think it it looks really cool, but it like, as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what they were like going for. Like, there wasn't a like, wait, was that supposed to be?
You know that crewman that, like, in the first episode, I was like, is that a changeling on the bridge? And then everybody was like, no, it's not a changeling. Or maybe it's a changeling, but we determined it's not a changeling.
Yeah.
But I have wondered, is there any possibility they drop that in there just to get people talking? They're like, let's put something close to a changeling, get that in the conversation, and then when it happens, people will know what a changeling is, even if they haven't thought about it in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I can say with 100% certainty that's not what happened.
Were you there, Fathery?
I can't say why I know that.
Okay. I was like,
I see. There's a whole lot of time stream stuff here. That's okay. I was just musing about the idea of it because it's funny because we had talked about them. Anyway.
But this dude who turns out to be a changeling, you do see him, in the first 2 episodes of the season, looking shady on the Titan. He kind of has some suspicious looks on his face.
Riker had Riker had a moment with him, right? Like he kind
Mhm.
of like gave him like a glare or something like that in episode 1.
Oh.
I
I noticed he wasn't the guy. Well, no, he wasn't like the dude. We saw that there was somebody watching Riker and Picard, but that wasn't him, right? And like they were like that was on Earth.
No.
Yeah,
though.
when Riker and Picard arrive on the Titan. Oh no, there's a different dude in
Yeah.
the bar on Earth.
Yeah.
In the
But then
bar,
when-
yeah.
Yeah.
When Riker and Picard are doing their their admiral inspection or whatever, there's like this guy in the corridor like looking at them like he's
Oh,
something
Mhm.
weird going on his. It was
Okay.
this guy, this
And
ensign.
I love that it's changing because it does make the like whole Beverly like trust no one thing. I was like, oh yeah, if they're changelings, yeah, don't trust anyone. But you can't unless you can get a little blood.
I guess she
Um,
couldn't have said like, or they didn't know it was changelings at the time.
She did not know at that point. She
Right,
just knew
right,
that
okay.
she
Just-
like went to
she-
some
she
Starfleet
just knew
officers and they attacked them.
But
Yeah,
but
they
she-
attacked through Fenris Rangers, Klingons, and Starfleet. So it seems like
Mhm.
there's no
Mhm.
one you can trust at that point.
There's just a lot that I loved about this episode that we probably should get into more detail during the actual like scenes, but
Well, let's just go ahead and talk about the opening of the episode. It kicks off where the last episode ended with the Shrike engaged in pursuit of the Titan. And just the more I see of Captain Shaw, I think I'm obviously not alone. I think a lot of people feel the same way. But yeah, I just like him the more I see of him. He's a pretty interesting character, and here we have a little bit more of that humanization of him that they kind of started in the second episode of the season after making him a big asshole in the first episode. But like here, like when he gives like his bridge crew a break, when he's like, y'all have been pushing it pretty hard for several hours. Go get some rest while you can. I was like, oh look, he's not always a jerk. He can be a nice guy.
What's next, Shaw? A pizza party?
And then he
I've
had
worked
his
in too many
classical
Clover
music.
Robinson.
He put on some Mozart, I guess, on the bridge to calm everyone down.
No, that was
Shaw
seven
is
listening.
That was seven.
That was seven listening to a
That
piece
was
that I
Oh,
think
that was
played
seven.
in.
That was seven. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that piece played in Voyager episode, or maybe on Prodigy, and
This is a-
Janeway was listening to it,
Oh,
like something like
interesting.
that. Yeah.
I don't know if
Shaw
there
is-
was Mozart in Voyager. I know that there was Chopin. Seven listened to Chopin.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
this is probably a good time
That's
to mention that we're not going to have gourd eggs this week. I promise I'll bring them back next week. It's just like it takes a lot of work to collect gourd eggs, and I haven't had time to round them up. But yeah, those are our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections I like to point out. This is a very atypical show. We normally have like a cool visual presentation. I'm normally not dropping in and out, unaware what my audio sounds like. So yeah, just
This is the
roll with us on
Nebula
this
show.
one.
Although
Yeah.
it's
This
not
is
a
your
nebula.
first,
We're in the nebula, so we're
Yeah.
all like, yeah, it's a really good.
Yeah, it's
I'm in a
it's
different
thematic.
location too. Like,
Except that, like I said, it's turned out
I'm
like
dressed.
apparently it's not a nebula, but we don't know what it is yet.
Right, the science officer, Tavine, the bald Vulcan, she's
Yeah.
like, oh, it appears the nebula is not a nebula. But then after that, like immediately after she says that, Riker goes back to calling it a nebula. Like the science officer just told you it's not a
He
nebula.
doesn't have time
Riker-
to call it the nebula that's not a nebula.
yeah, Riker doesn't know what it is. He's just going to call it a nebula.
It sounds like it's some organic. There's something organic in it, but I don't know where they're headed with that. I think if they're gonna get
Yeah.
out of it, I wonder if it's because they're gonna do some Star Trekky stuff where they communicate with sort of the beings or whatever are in there, and maybe they can use that to get out. I don't know.
Our friend Aaron Geek Filter, who's here in the live audience this week, but he was suspecting it's similar to and of course, with him, it's going to be an animated series reference. But one of our planets is missing. That life form that was very, very V'ger-like before V'ger. Star Trek really does repeat itself a lot, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Look, there's
But
a lot of episodes.
Yeah. I mean, we're closing in on 900 episodes, so.
Also, there's like something, I don't know. I personally like that kind of like history, not repeating the same way, but history like the iterations of history, if you will. Like, this is a similar challenge that came up 100 years ago, but how did these guys handle it? So it's like that kind of thing. It makes me happy.
I would say Shaw is growing on me. I do find him funnier and funnier, but he's still on thin ice for dead naming Seven.
Yeah.
He has to apologize for not calling her Seven before
and that
truly on board with him.
That did lead to one of my favorite moments with what's Geordie's daughter's name?
Sydney.
Oh, Crash. Yeah, Sydney LaForge. Crash.
Yeah, where she very specifically made a point of calling her Commander 7. I love that so much.
Yes, that scene was great.
Yeah. I love when Seven, her two little quibs, like where she kind of jabs at them. What did she say? This sounds rehearsed. To Sydney.
Yeah.
And then
she's
later
still to the point.
More
to the
exactly.
point.
Yeah.
And then to Jack later, she says, "Well, you're insane." And I was like cracking up. I was like, "This is so funny."
I feel like the show is remembering that both Michael Dorn and Jerry Ryan have really good comedic timing, and they're using it really well.
It is using
and the show understands those characters' sense of humor, and also has given them both like a ton of growth, where they don't feel like neither one. They both feel very different than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, they feel different, but in a way that it makes sense. I see how this character became this version of this character.
And add to that, people who enjoyed season 1 and season 2 of Picard are getting delightful connections and moments that harken back to those seasons. Like in that scene with Beverly and Jean-Luc, when he says, "I now know I would not have been like my father," we're he does now know that.
Because he understands why his dad was the way he remembered him better. After
exactly.
He's like, too.
Beverly, I had a character arc.
Yes.
Well, I had one too, but it was off screen, damn it, and that's not fair, and you better give me a show, Terry Matalas.
Yes. I would watch that. I would watch her and Jack doing their two-fisted Doctors Without Borders.
I really did love them anticipating we would all be like, why does he have a British accent?
Oh yeah.
I love that clue. We hired a British actor and he has a British accent. Please just go with it.
But also, I'm sure they wanted that vocal continuity. Even though you would they had to contrive it a little bit because but they wanted it so when we saw him, it would start clicking into place like it did for Riker. It's a slight contrivance, but I thought it was neat that they did it.
He also visually resembles Patrick Stewart.
In a way
that Tom Hardy does not.
and they're writing his dialogue to be very British. Every episode there's a Britishism somewhere in there. Last week it was "Oi, Starfleet," and then here he's when Seven's like, "This gas is gonna kill you," and it's instead of saying it's gonna have to get in line, so it's gonna have to join the queue,
which created a mini intrigue spurt on Twitter where people were like, "Did he say the queue?" And then someone put the subtitle, and then someone put the subtitles up and was like, "No, it's Q, a line."
Okay, I find that really funny because for years on when I was big on Tumblr, not I was big, but Tumblr was big. There was a thing where if you put something in your queue, you had a tag for it, and mine was Deja Q with the Deja and then the word Q.
Nice.
That's pretty funny.
But no, that did not occur to me at all because I knew the British word Q.
Same here. I understood what he was talking about. Rachel and I are going to watch a very British film after this. So
this is true.
Maybe. Yeah, nice. We are. Okay, good.
It's a very British film that you chose.
Father, it looks like you've pulled up. Did we get a, what do you call it? Super comments?
Oh, nice. Snoopy McQueen. Snoopy, Father is gone, so I'll just say Snoopy's been around for a while. So thank you, Snoopy. Snoopy says, Picard Season 3, Episode 3, awesome. The tension between Riker and Picard was great. Worf was great. I agree with all of that.
Yep. You know what? I don't know if other people saw this or but to me it seemed like there was like this twinkle in Worf's eyes sometimes when he was talking to Raffi, and I was just like, he was so charming, and like it seemed like he had a certain slyness that like almost like in movies it's like when you have like an old sensei or something and they've got a little wise way about them, but they're also a little bit scampish. He had just a little bit of a slyness to it. I thought it was so cool how they caught that.
Yeah, and that was a lot of that was by design. Michael Dorn was kind of unsure about being this silver targ version of Worf. He was kind of unsure about looking old, and he was talking to Terry Matalas about doing this older version of Worf, and the character that they thought up, the old dude in Kill Bill, what from the Kung Fu movie, Pai Mei, is that his name?
Pai Mei.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Pai Mei.
Yeah. Yeah, Worf was like, oh, yeah, Pai Mei is cool. Yeah, maybe we do like Pai Mei Worf. So that's kind of what they were aiming for, and I agree.
I feel like they made a good call.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I think there's something that would
work. we got some money from Geek Filter. Like that's awesome. Thank you. Oh yes, this is like a really interesting point. So do you want me to read it, Father, or do you want to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay. One random fact that may not come up. They said only 117 people died from that portal attack. That seems impossible. Yeah, it did seem like a huge, much bigger than that. But now that I've seen the episode one, like, 17 or 18 times,
47 or nothing.
I'm wondering if the Starfleet recruitment facility was like sparsely
populated,
understaffed.
Yeah,
understaffed perhaps, or sparsely staffed. Like,
well, we don't yet know. Like, there wasn't like demands associated with it. With a normal terrorist attack, you want a lot of deaths, and like you want it to be something that's splashy, and so that it scares the hell out of people. Obviously, this scared the hell out of people, but I guess without knowing it, like maybe they didn't really like, if all it was meant to do was distract, ultimately,
which
maybe
is what
it didn't
that
really
one
matter to them
changeling
how
said.
many people they killed.
Yeah, the one changeling, didn't he say like that was just a distraction from something else? Like,
yeah,
right. So
that said, like it also fell on the city, so like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe.
But if they were at
just...
work, if the folks living in those buildings, assuming they're residential, because they look lower, like if it was during the work hours, it is possible that most of those buildings were, sparsely populated as well. But it just, I do think it is a little low still. Like,
yeah,
although I also am glad that Picard isn't giving us like the kind of obscene numbers we usually get in,
Yeah,
like...
I'm surprised people are complaining about this instead of. Oh, I mean, like, do y'all
I
want
don't
it to
know
be
if it's
like
a complaint, it's an
5 solar
observation.
systems were wiped out in the first wave of the attack, and next time it's going to be half the galaxy, and then after that it'll be the entire multiverse.
It just does seem like that building was bigger than
Aaron is just bloodthirsty.
No, I agree with them too.
No,
I think the number should have been
know.
around 300 if I were to say
300 to 1,000 would probably have made more sense, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I also feel like that's on par. I can hear the dogs going crazy.
we excited the dog.
They also wanted to chime in.
What we see from Changeling attacks like early in Deep Space Nine, that they like attack kind of small numbers that people get freaked out. Like there's that whole arc. One of the episodes is called Homefront, and it's a two-parter, and I can't remember what the other episode's called.
Something Paradise Lost.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, where Cisco and goes back to Earth and all that.
But like it starts with like they go back because of a changeling attack, but it's a changeling attack at a relatively small dinner, and it like causes them all to lose their minds.
Well, this may be a little bit of a utopian trek. It's like even terrorist attacks of the future are a little bit not as terrible as they are
You know
now.
what? I'll take it. Good.
Yeah, good medical stuff. I don't know.
Mhm.
I like that. I like
emergency
how you tied
transporters. Who knows?
I like how you tied that in though, because it makes sense. Like, the founders and the changelings in general are very cunning, and like they
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
things very calculated. So it would make sense that they would like. It's just enough to get like, look how pissed Raffi is. I mean, to her, it's like a big deal,
Yeah.
right? Like, so it's enough to get like Starfleet going and investigating in one direction, but meanwhile they're doing something in a totally different direction, and we don't even know what that is yet. I don't think.
I have the feeling they just slightly, the writers or whatever, just slightly lowballed the number. But it'll be interesting to see if there's any, like, if there is any greater meaning that might come out of this story as it twists and turns.
I like that. I like tying it in. Now that we know the changelings are involved, like there's a new layer to all the
But is it...
things that we've seen before.
Yeah. Fathery, are we going? Are we kind of ranging around here, or do we want to like go on a little more next scene or?
Well, yeah. Let's talk about that flashback near the beginning where we see a younger Riker and a younger Picard, and I really want to see that on my TV because I've only watched it on my computer screen. But how did
Same.
So y'all? How did the CGI on their faces look? Because I thought it was like weirdly inconsistent. Like sometimes it looked really good, like a lot of de-aging does, and then sometimes it was like, oh, Riker looks a little like his eyes look a little cartoony. So that kind of threw me off a little.
Watching it on my iPad, so I didn't like pay super close attention to that, and I think I hate digital de-aging a lot of the time, so I try to ignore it.
For me, it felt like now that I've seen the bold glamour filter on TikTok, I'm like, why didn't they just use that?
But it sets up that whole conflict between the two characters, where one of them has spent 20 years dealing with the loss of his son, and this other one just like, oh, I just found out that I've had a son for 20 years, so they're kind of opposite directions, and it was like a good reminder of like, oh yeah, Riker did have this experience with this, getting this baby boy and becoming a parent for the first time and everything. And the name of the episode, 17 seconds, when I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? Does it take 17 seconds for this weapon to recharge its batteries? They have like 17 seconds between attacks. Like, what is this going to mean? And then it's like, 17 seconds was the longest felt like the longest turbo lift ride of Riker's life.
Loco New York. Go ahead, and I'll say after.
I have 4 years, like even like with Deanna as one thing, but I have like always like wanted to see Riker as a father, and like obviously we got that in the first season, but it's like really seeing him like, I guess, be in his emotions as a father was like, I don't know, for me it was like decades of like watching Star Trek and like being like, I think this dude would be a good dad, like, and I was like,
did you feel?
Dad.
Were you pretty satisfied with that scene? Were you more than satisfied?
Yeah, I got a little teary-eyed. Well, like when he was talking about like how much he loved Thad, and it made me teary-eyed because I obviously have the knowledge that Thad has since passed away.
Sure.
And also, I like that, again, that's like another big connection to like previous seasons of Picard itself. I love how it like ties in really beautifully with, like, we know that
they didn't abandon anything. They didn't abandon anything from the first two seasons. They found ways to incorporate that into their new story they're telling for season 3. So as much as this does feel like a fifth TNG movie, it's still Picard season 3.
Yeah.
Also, any flaws in the de-aging aside, the performances again here were really great and touching and moving, and like there was a lot of nuance, like like a lot of that British face acting that Jonathan Frakes teases Sir Patrick Stewart about,
including some British face acting from Marina Sirtis. We get the first season 3 appearance of Troy.
I love that. I will say I prefer the way that Star Trek does the digital de-aging to like the other Star franchise, where it's like, we'll do it a little subtly, but we'd rather have the actor's performance come through than like completely like make them look like they did at this time period. Then you get a Luke Skywalker that can only stand there because he looks exactly like Luke Skywalker, but it's not actually an actor who can emote.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing that Loco New York posted earlier was that she hadn't like it was kind of dark enough in the scene she didn't really notice the de-aging, and I was kind of the same way.
Same.
I got from context obviously that it was set in the past. I don't have a giant TV though, so maybe that was just me.
I usually watch it on my giant TV, but I was having internet issues yesterday, so I refused to not watch the episode, so I used my phone as a hotspot to watch it on my iPad.
I just watched it today on the giant TV with my mom, and like just seeing her kind of like giggling or laughing, when Troy called, because it like felt like familiar to her, like from when she was, had a baby, like it, like she's like, and she kind of even said something like, your dad used to just go to the bar and hang out with his friends too, and like I was like, wow, like this is like very relatable to my mom, like
I really like that when they have her call, they didn't do the like age-old thing of like eye roll, my wife is lagging. They're like, no, she's right, we should go. Like.
By the way, my answer to my mom was like, I didn't know Dad was horrible, and she's like, you should go to the bar more. I was like, wow, like we almost got into a fight over that scene.
Wow.
But she she was just being silly. The other thing is so on the big TV I did notice like there were some like kind of blur things, but we've seen these actors like that's the thing about HD is like we're so used to how Sir Patrick Stewart looks like normal because we've been seeing him that way that it's going to be very obvious, like it doesn't like I don't know, it's always going to look like something, right?
And I think it's like doing it when it's like HD, even like rewatching some episodes of TNG in HD and you're like, oh, that doesn't look as good.
Yeah. I will say it was interesting, like I was wondering like and I don't know, Aaron and I talked about this, but I wondered if you guys had like any input on this, but they were in 10 Forward, but like didn't Jean-Luc seem like he had never been to 10 Forward before the bar, like in
when he went there in early season 2?
Yeah, it's like a gray area.
He hadn't been there in a while, so
I assumed it was
like, am I on the right street? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's what they were thinking. Yeah, but
I guess
you
could interpret it that way.
It's an easy
I think
retcon.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I just remember having that question.
Speaking of Jean-Luc, we hear Riker tell the story of when he became a father. Now I guess Picard is living that experience, right? Or at least like learning like, oh wow, I'm a father now, I'm a parent. And so there's this big build up, last week. They didn't say anything. There's a whole climax of last week's episode. It was like, oh, they just look at each other. So here they finally talk. Bev and JL sit down, have a Beverly, you got some splaining to do. So her explanation,
nice tie into Lucille Ball and Desi
to the franchise's history. Yeah,
I love Riker's not subtle. Like, hey Jack, want to go over here?
Yeah,
Jack was fiery. He didn't want to do it.
I love that, by the way. I'm a mama's boy. I'm unashamedly a mama's boy, and like I love how defensive Jack was, and like how like protective he was of his mother. Like it's a very like it shows a lot about his his character.
They're the only family either of them has ever had. So yeah, of course he has that that connection.
And not only that, they seem like they've been.
I have so many questions about how Wesley. I was like, has he never met Wesley?
He's traveling. He's the traveler now.
I bet that will come up as time goes by, though. But yeah, they've also been in this very isolated position, and people bond under duress, and they've been under this very stressful,
for a
essentially
long time,
two-person show. It sounds like maybe they've had allies and stuff, but it's really mainly been them, and so yeah, I bet they're like really tightly bonded.
Well, we learned that I guess he was conceived at Casperia Prime. That's the vacation planet that I guess rivals Risa. We heard about in DS9, by the way. But I guess this was sometime after Nemesis, so I'm still not real sure exactly how old Jack is, or I guess like I guess like his mom was in her 50s when she got pregnant, so that kind of raises questions. But
remember, you got to apply the whole the very well kind of shown thing that humans live longer and they probably have longer periods of fertility through medical help or whatever.
Yes, women like usually with at this point in time with like some medical intervention, but people age slower then. I'm going to point out that Keiko goes to her mother's 100th birthday during Deep Space Nine. Keiko is not that old. Keiko's mom would have had to have her when her like 80. Like in her
I like in the live audience, Jill 47's explanation is that Dr. Crusher would have had some rejuvenation from, I guess, Star Trek Insurrection from the Bucking
that's
planet.
a really good point.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen that theory.
uh,
That is a really good theory.
that like regenerated
Have you noticed your
her
breasts are
ovaries, I
firmer?
guess.
Like, it's like it's true.
Yes,
That's a
there
really
are
good point.
plenty of women in today's like that have children who are like when they're over
Someone
50.
pointed out a bunch of women, and I was surprised that because I was always also taught I was taught the same thing, or I learned the same thing that like a lot of people have is that like, you know, there's like a cutoff period in your 30s or something, right? Like I forget, but
or 40s. It normally
40s,
happens before 50s, but yeah, it's not impossible. I just thought it was worth.
Not things can. They start calling it a geriatric pregnancy with those words like over 35, which is insane.
Oh wow! I know so many women who have.
Things can get more complicated after the age of 35.
Sure.
Like with that are like you can get around today with like today's medical with like genetic testing and that kind of stuff.
Wow. So like Picard takes place 400 years from now. No, 300 years from now, right? Like no, more than that, right? Like
400.
Yeah,
400 years from now.
I could definitely see science developing enough that like
it just seems really weird that you would get accidentally pregnant in your 50s, but
that might have been a bit of a contrivance on their part that they needed to make this work. In general, this kind of the basic, had a kid right after we parted for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you, is a contrivance if you're not talking about like old world stuff where like a sailor goes off somewhere. Like these people have communications.
I also think that like to an extent, like, and Beverly kind of, I think there's supporting dialogue for this where, in that really powerful moment where she says like, I lost my parents, I lost my husband, I lost my, my son Wesley, and, to the same stars that rule you or whatever, right? Like she didn't want like, I think like there's a very real possibility, if I had to speculate, that maybe Beverly wanted to have a child and like didn't bother terminating the pregnancy and then the reason why she decided to not say anything is because that's what she knew best. She knew how to raise a child. Wesley's father died when he was 4, so she knew like how to raise a child independently, and she had to do it. So I feel like the fear that she had and that she presented was very valid, and because of that, again, right or wrong, that's not what I'm kind of interested in. It's just like, I don't know what the show is going to say to explain it further, or if it even needs further explaining. But I will just say, for me, I didn't come out of it. Well, there's a whole powerful connection too. Last night on Twitter, there were like a bunch of spaces and a lot of people talking and hashing this out. And one thing that I found profound was like, when Jack almost kind of dies and like is revived, it's kind of the same as like it's a rebirth in a sense. So Picard was at the rebirth of his son.
Is. Yeah,
like it's like
he was getting that experience, that Riker laid out about the longest turbo lift ride of my life, and that was his 17 seconds here.
It's very powerful stuff. I don't know. I'm a little like kind of into it. Like
Dave, I'll agree with what you said at the top of the show about the Riker and Jack stuff being really good and kind of overshadowing the Beverly and
or
Picard
being overshadowed by
that line. Where he tells them, your dad's not perfect. We're all faulty, just human. And they even like remind us about like the synth body thing where he's like, oh, isn't he positronic now? He's like, he's still human. He's still the same dude. So don't worry about that.
And the way Riker said, I had a son too, where it's just a simple line, but the way he says it, you can feel the weight of his, his loss.
And I feel
they remind you of that. Add a lot in this episode, but it never seems like out of place. It always kind of fits in organically.
Yeah, they're doing it like a really good job of. I think they knew there's a good chance that people are just. There are some people that are just going to watch season 3 because they're like, "Oh, I heard the TNG cast is back," and they're like, "Hey, you have to remind people about the important things from the first couple seasons." But they've done it in a way that the way Riker says, "I had a son." People can honor people who did not watch first season were like, "Oh, his son died." Like,
Yeah.
there's I understand what he's saying.
They weren't kidding in the press junkets when the performers, the actors were all saying like that they really got great stuff. Like just in the first 3 episodes so far, like I mean, just in this episode, like what we see from Jonathan Frakes, Sir Patrick Stewart, Gates McFadden, and Michael Dorn is outstanding. But also not
It's
just
true.
him, everyone. Like the whole, like I'm really like excited about the Titan Bridge crew and like the we haven't talked about that yet, but like
yeah,
the Titan
and we
crew.
don't really know them, but like they feel like they're real people that like we just showed up on their ship. If we had been there a while, we would know all about
Right.
Tavine and Crash and Murrah.
That's true.
And,
Tavine gets a lot of presence. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of science shit to explain if you're the science officer. So.
And by the way, to the actor, flawless Vulcan.
Yeah, very, very Vulcan, but with a unique look. I mean, there have been some bald
Yeah.
Vulcans, but there were like monks and stuff in Star Trek 3. But yeah, she definitely has a unique presence among the various Vulcans throughout the years.
I think it's been confirmed, Fathery, that her vow of celibacy is on record as well.
That's
so
a Delton thing. She's
Yeah,
half
I know.
Delton.
I think so. I think it's been confirmed by Terry
Oh.
Metalis or someone, I forget, or maybe even,
So
That is a lot of
humans-
stresses.
Humans can't survive sex with a Delton, but apparently Vulcans can. I mean, that kind of makes sense based on what we know about Vulcans. So
Knowing what I know about humans, I bet there's still a lot of volunteers to just whatever happens.
good grief.
I've had to guess.
Gene Roddenberry's novelization of the motion picture, if you want to know more about Delton sexuality. Yeah, I guess.
I think one reason I'm enjoying this season so much is like watching something where the people clearly care about the TNG characters, and so I was like, it makes me so happy that Nemesis isn't the last time we see them.
Right.
Right.
We talked about how little Gates had to do in all of those
Stuart
movies,
Barrett did.
and she got so much to do in this one.
I feel like she probably has more lines in this episode than she did in the 4 movies combined.
I bet.
I'm a little
really
exaggerating,
Yeah, I believe
but I
it.
don't think I'm exaggerating by much.
Certainly, she will by the end of this series. Like way more than maybe.
Let
even more
me
than
ask y'all
a lot of like she might break some other records. Who knows?
Well, we've been talking for about an hour. We haven't gotten into like the blood in the water thing of like how the Shrike is tracking the Titan, the Verterium gas that's leaking that they're changeling on board. And they keep giving Jack interesting stuff to do where he teams up with Seven. He's like, oh, I can't get on the bridge, so I'll go get the smart Borg lady and work with her. I kind of like just it almost felt kind of random just teaming the two of those characters up, but I liked that. Oh yeah, look, it gives them both something to do, and
it's kind of one of the fun things that Trek does sometimes when you've got an ensemble. Sometimes put together two people you might not expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get those interesting pairings, and just Seven being a Voyager character. I will say that I don't always agree with all the choices they made in the writers' room on Voyager. I think there were a lot of missed opportunities, but one of the good things about that show that it consistently did regularly is it did find those interesting pairs of the different. Oh well, we'll put Tom Paris as like the assistant nurse on occasion in sickbay, and he'll have to work with the doctor, or oh, we'll make Tuvok this long-term best friend of Janeway, but he also has kind of this rivalry and tension with Chakotay, and but Tuvok can kind of bond with Seven over like, look at how illogical all the humans are, and I was always finding those cool little pairings, and it kind of reminded me of Voyager's legacy of doing that here, seeing Jack and
Very
Seven
cool.
work together.
Jack kind of pulled a Kirk. He, like piece of the action, like when he goes up to the dude, he's like, "What have they done to you? What have they done to you?" Just pops the dude. He's they're action doctors.
It's also good.
And there's.
Go ahead,
they've managed to give Jack a lot to do without having him like overpower the other characters. We're just like, where they're having it work with the other characters, but it's not like the new guy's here. We want you to like him, so we're going to only focus on him.
Right. He doesn't come off as balance. And he doesn't come off as like too like dumb and worthless either. It's like, oh, look at like the dumb Picard Jr. went and got himself knocked out from the gas. Like now they got to waste.
I noticed they particularly made a point to show a quiet scene where he's being a very empathetic doctor with one of the Titan's crewmen. He's not being a smartass. He's not pushing back against anybody. He's treating her very gently and talking her through her injuries. And
and you're like,
I saw somebody in the comments say that they wouldn't mind seeing this guy in his own series. And yeah,
I wouldn't either. Like, he's an interesting character. I've always enjoyed that actor and everything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
Ironically, this is the least British thing I've seen him in. He's very like he's in Downton Abbey. Like, but yeah, because that one scene was great because it was like, oh, he's a good doctor. Okay, like it's a very like show don't tell thing. Like we can be told someone's a good doctor, but seeing him in action is like way more useful for TV.
We've mostly seen him a little bit more as like slightly the scoundrel, the guy who had to broker stuff with the Rangers, or who's pushing back against Picard. So I thought it was important that they did that, and that was a good move on their part.
I'm really pleased also to see okay, so we lost Father. he got beamed aboard the Shrike, damn it. We didn't turn on the dampeners like in time. But I do like that we're seeing this like kind of talking about legacy, but we're seeing Dr. Crusher. I know I'm really Dr. Crusher focused here, but I really love Beverly. But we're seeing like sort of like legacy of her legacy. Like there's so much of Beverly in Jack. Like, you know what I mean? Like certainly like we saw on the show that like someone's listening to the old logs. I'm sure Jack, Beverly did say like, oh, at some point I told him who you are. So he's known he's known who his father is for a while, and then Beverly says like, but he decided not to know you, and that's where Jean-Luc's heart kind of breaks. He just like gets really angry, and that's where the Riker and him tension starts. I love how the two scenes kind of flow beautifully into kind of like each other. Also, it all feels very like well done and stuff.
Somebody mentioned in the chat, they were saying that he sees the crew members staring at him, and he's like, I didn't ask for this. He's like, he was ready to turn himself over to Vadic, and Riker kind of, I think rightly says, he's like, it's true. He's like, there's a little, that's true. He's like, but you do have to own it now that it's happened. And so he's in a position where he kind of has to sort of show the crew that he's a worthwhile person.
Riker that was a good line from Riker when he was like, the best thing you can do for them now is just, give them a reason to, this is worth it. It's worth saving you.
Sometimes Riker can be a little tough love, and I think that's a little tough love he might have needed there.
I'm probably gonna choose
Uncle Riker.
I'm gonna choose not to talk the rest of this live show because of my connection issues, but I'm just gonna say thoughts in the private chat that one of these other people can read. But I'm gonna hang out backstage a little bit.
All right. Father, if you have any particular topics to prompt us along, prompt away, but otherwise I'm sure we can find our way through the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about... I guess there is that cool, I guess when Picard and Riker, when they are working well together for a little while, when he's like, Will, it might be time you called me number one. And it's like, oh, yeah, you have like their cool, like, buddies, working, they're kind of on like this little buddy cop adventure and everything's working well. And then, then the tension really gets ratcheted up when they're when you're bringing up people's dead sons and stuff at work. It's like, ooh, yeah, you don't want to go there. You're pissing Riker off, John. You might want to back off.
I have a question about that in a minute, but first, like, the energetic side of it, like, was pretty great when they just fall into the roles. He's like, he asks if somebody could fire a photon and they could target it and blow it up and, essentially, like, use it like a flashbang to get out of there. And they're just, man, Picard's just on the spot. This guy, he could probably jump on any console on that bridge and be pretty aces with it, and he did.
That was a cool. Also, all the space all the space stuff, the spaceship stuff, like the visuals, are just so good. Like I'm dying to, and I know they hold up on the big screen because I've seen it already, like on a huge screen. So like I'm dying to see what it looks like. Like I hope they do a festival, like a 5-day festival, like 2 episodes, a day, because I know they've been directed in pairs, so it might be a good way to see, like, 2-hour chunks or whatever they're whatever they end up being. But yeah, like that scene in particular, it feels, sorry Rachel, one more thing, which is it feels like there are indeed references to like a lot of previous Star Trek, but the way it's being done feels new and fresh and kind of like iterative rather than like it feels like an iteration or like an evolution rather than like a derivative thing. So yeah.
So I will slightly argue against that, but like I don't have like a thesis or anything, but I was a little distracted in the original 17-second scenes with Riker, where when he talked about that, I was a little noticing the Wrath of Khan callback, seemingly, from when they say, when McCoy tells Kirk, "You better get down here, you better hurry," and I was like, okay, Riker used almost those, very close to those words, and I felt like it was a deliberate callback, and I was kind of distracted by it. So I kind of found myself feeling more of the Riker's father stuff in a scene that didn't make me think of that, when he's just talking to when he was talking to Jack, and they were sort of talking around father issues, but yeah, that's an opinion. That's totally fair.
I will say the like "you better get down here" is such a cliche of like medical drama that it did not occur to me for Wrath of Khan. That I was just like, yeah, that's just what doctors say in TV shows. Like,
I was thinking more of just like the chase, like the overall landscape, the chase through the nebula. Like that's the part that I thought was like, layer, like that was the layer harkening back, but doing it in a new way, like adding this new thing of like this like nebula having biological, component to it, like as well as the interference being somehow, like remember when Tavine's like, she's like, yeah, like they keep having these like weird power things or like, whatever, and Tavine says like, yeah, these electrical things are both, it's both this and biological. I forget what she said exactly, but yeah.
I just had a weird thought. Like, I think this is a stupid thought, but I'm just going to say it anyway. We know that there may be something else at the Daystrom Institute that they were pursuing.
Right.
The Genesis device did create organic life where there was no life. The Genesis torpedo, when it blew up, created a sort of nebula of life. I know it wasn't where this is taking place, or at least it'd be weird if it was, and nobody knew it. But like, it is kind of weird that there's organic matter in there. Is there any chance Genesis is going to surface as a plot point? Is that just ridiculous?
I like it. I have a different theory of what I thought they were stealing from the Daystrom, which is just basically stealing a plot line from Star Trek Online. I thought maybe the female changeling was there.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's kidnapped. Like, we're not kidnapped. She's captured at the end of Deep Space Nine.
Oh.
I see in the comments. Vanilla Pat says Daystrom had to be lore. I wonder.
But we've seen. I feel like whatever
lore makes sense.
I feel like whatever this mystery is, we haven't seen. I feel like they've shown us very little in the trailers, and like what we've seen in the trailers is not going to be as big as whatever this big thing is. Like I'm suspicious.
Right? They held back on that.
Yeah, I think they probably did.
Yeah. Let me ask y'all. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, Fathery is a thing. Also, the portal weapon looks really cool. The,
It does.
and
I thought it was a little
such a
gimmicky,
cool-
but I can't deny it looks great, especially when it
I
like
thought it was a really
turned their
cool idea.
torpedoes on them.
Yeah, and it was funny though. You mentioned that you better get down here made you think of Wrath of Khan, but just the idea of Riker being on the bridge and being called to like his birth made me think of like the last episode of Voyager,
which I haven't seen. So
well,
that's okay. Don't worry about spoilers.
I'm gonna read one of Father's comments from the private chat for the audience. If this turns out to be the Genesis device, I will pull my hair out.
Well, listen, there has been a lot of references to Wrath of Khan, more than seems just coincidence.
There has.
And I think that would be weird too. I'm just saying it
but
could potentially play a role.
Now that someone in the comments said it's lore, they're probably right. It's probably lore or Moriarty. Like two things we already know is in the show. Like,
what about Agabus?
The theory,
it could be...
the theory that I've had for a while is what if lore is part of this bad guy cabal or whatever. And they unleash Moriarty. I think this was actually Aaron's theory, but they unleash Moriarty on Lore because Moriarty was designed to be intelligent enough to rival Data, and if Lore is Data's twin brother, then you would think you could just use him on Lore as well.
I really love that. I kind of hope that's what it is.
But on that note, do y'all want to talk about the reveals we get with Worf and Raffi, which kind of when we learned that who the bad guys really are, who Vadic, I guess must be working with. She has the portal weapon that they stole and that they used on Metalis Prime.
She's 100% working with them because she was following this trail, right?
The changeling was leaving for her. So when he has that line, the captured changeling, who I guess was just like his when Worf knocks him out, he's just like playing possum. He's like, I'm just gonna go along with this, pretend to be a junkie until I can slip away. Tell them something they'll want to hear, and then maybe they'll let me go in time to regenerate. And he just ran out of time and had to reveal himself. But
there is early in Deep Space Nine where Odo gets knocked out, but I wonder if we're supposed to ignore that.
Probably. But when he says, what does he say exactly? The like-minded souls, enemies of the Federation. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if there's like a Star Trek Legion of Doom, where just like all the bad guys are just everyone who couldn't take on the Federation individually, they're just all like throwing their hands together and joining forces for one big attack on the Federation. Board, Tal Shiar, anyone could show up now and be an enemy. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but
it's a slightly risky thing to pull off, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It'd be tough because there'd be so many competing motivations. The notion that they would just be like, well, let's just wreck the Federation. Sure. That's a very supervillain kind of thing in comics.
Because I was thinking it was going to be like everyone was specifically like people who had Picard as an enemy. But the changelings in general, there's no reason they would target Picard specifically.
Sure.
Right. So I'm hoping it's more than just the changelings, because it seems really weird.
I bet it is.
We're gonna get the TNG band back together. We're gonna give Picard his big send off this final season, and they're gonna go up against DS9's bad guys. That's a bit of an odd choice. So I think that there will be more to it.
And we know that they are a splinter faction.
I'm the one who fights these people.
Yeah, and Worf being on the case and being proactive, and I need to talk about Worf because he's one of my favorite Star Trek characters. People who've listened to the show, they've heard me talk about how I grew up, loving his character so much. Because of DS9, because the DS9 Worf is what made me fall in love with his character more so than the TNG stuff. But they're remembering that growth in DS9 more than they're remembering it, but they're continuing it. It's like this show recognizes the trajectory that DS9 put Worf on, and they're continuing that. And just like the more chill Worf, the Worf who kind of mellowed out over the years, he's very zen. He's very he's almost like Tao or Buddhism or he's he no longer believes in good and evil, which is crazy. Worf, you always believed in these righteous causes, and now he's like, oh yeah, I'm just like the small man trying to do things, and we're all just these small little creatures, and And these things that we have such certainty about, these notions of good and evil, and how like so much of that is no longer the driving forces of his passions, and he's learned his biggest enemy is himself and controlling himself, and I just love that. It just felt right to me. It just felt right.
You know what I would like to hear him mention? I'd love to hear him mention Jadzia as an influence on his expanded consciousness.
But I feel that that's part of it here, and even like the way that he's kind of witty and has a sense of humor here. When beheadings are on Wednesdays, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, just those few brief years that he spent with his Parmakai Jadzia, those few years, they really did change him for the better.
Worf.
Yeah.
By the way, as a quick aside to those kind of callbacks, he was I presume referencing Odo when he talked about a man like a changeling of honor.
100%. Yeah.
I really liked that.
That they found a way to like bring up Odo and be like, wanted to be like, Odo's not a part of this. Without like, obviously they can't really use Odo.
Right.
And to be like, Odo's not a part of this. Odo is still a good guy. Like,
I did picture this. I did picture this whole scene that happened like off camera of Odo, appearing in the Great Link and being like, oh, I guess we have like this faction of renegade changelings. Then he's got to like call some Vorta to come over and be like, okay, take this memo, and like some Vorta like has to come like type out this email and then send it to Worf wherever Worf is. So I don't know, I just found all of that kind of funny to picture. But
I wrote down his opener to Raffi. He's like, I am Worf, son of Moog, house of Martok, son of Sergei, house of Verzhenko, Bane of the Duras family, Slayer of Gowron.
He's so confident and sure of himself now that he's allowing himself to bring out the human sides of his identity in his past.
Absolutely love that he was like, these are the people who raised me, and they're just as important. And I love that he's introducing himself now like he's Daenerys Targaryen.
Right, and before he probably would have been ashamed to call himself a House Rozhenko and make up like this human name for a house. Probably would have been ashamed. And the music, the opera music that he's listening to, he's not listening to Klingon opera. That was Picard's opera music from First Contact. But it's like oh yeah, it's okay for me to listen to like human music. I don't have to do everything 100% Klingon all the time. Like
there's a lot of storytelling and character building there without him saying blank happened to me and this changed me. He said that he's changed, and he said a little bit about how, but yeah, it's like revealed through all these little insights. I did also like when he just said, when we got the reveal, and he's like, well, what is it he said? Is he's like, how long has it been since you were part of the Great Link?
The Great Link, yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. That was very the drama in that scene,
like the way they did it. Because I had noticed that dude's face, but they didn't get a confirmation what it was. And then him saying like, "How long have you been part of the Great Link?" I was giddy in a way. That does not make sense considering these are like the enemies of characters I love. But I was just so happy they were there.
I felt it too. It's just it was done so well. Like that's the other thing. Like I think Jonathan Frakes brought something very cinematic to this, but also like because he has a very good way. Like there's just moments like Seven pacing, Seven trying to fix this thing. Like there's like really good moments, but then he also is able to like direct like really great moments where there's like a big reveal or there's meant to be like a big like kind of like moment where you get giddy or something like that. Jonathan Frakes does a really good job of like just directing. I love him for Star Trek. I love him so much.
Well let's talk about the no, that's great, Sohel, because they're setting us up to talk about like the the big ending where he does like Picard is this whole time pushing Captain Riker to be be more aggressive. We got to be on the attack against the Shrike. We get one shot to take him out, and Riker is just like, John-Luc, what the hell are you talking about? This ain't the Enterprise. That ship is going to destroy the Titan if we try to fight.
I confess I was slightly confused by these scenes. I felt like I missed something obvious, where I was not quite sure why Picard was being so aggressive.
Well, Riker's theory is that it's like, no, like we get like you just found out you're a dad and you want to stop these people that are coming after your son, but I think we need to be more cautionary. And I guess Picard didn't think that they stood a good shot of like getting away. That
this was the only way out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Riker, because he is so loyal, he can't reject, when Picard is like, there it is, fire everything we got right now. Like, you see Jonathan Frakes, he's both directing it well and performing it well, because we see the look on his face where he doesn't want to go along with Picard, but he can't. It's like he can't say no. It's like he's got to be like, yeah, fire. Like, we got to do what Captain Picard says. Like he's first officer on the Enterprise again. So and then the way that when he turns to Picard, and we don't even see Riker's face, but you can feel how pissed he is when he says, remove yourself from the bridge. You've just killed us all. And like he's probably angry at himself for not being able to ignore Picard. But yeah,
right.
like, and it's almost kind of a meta thing where like you kind of know like, oh, Riker is directing this episode. Like he doesn't want us to see his angry face when he's angry at Picard. But and then also when Picard does get out of line, like I get Riker being so pissed off when Picard tells Riker, I understand, why you want to be overtly cautious here. Talking about like, because of the death of your son and everything, and now like you're gonna take like the scaredy cat approach, and I don't want to do that. I want to go stop these bad guys now. And yeah, like, if you're Riker and you hear that, obviously the worst thing that ever happened in his life, being used against him. It's like, shut up, crazy grandpa. You don't know what you don't even know, the procedure on ships that go warp 9.99 now, as we proved a couple episodes ago. Like, you need to shut up and leave me alone and let me do my job. And I can't function with you here, on the bridge.
Miss Powell family in the audience pointed out a really cool thing about like the chain of command. We've seen like some examples of like how it works and like authority on a ship and all that stuff. And Jean-Luc got his one like override, right, where he's like, belay that order. And then Shaw, when he's injured, he makes sure to give the command codes over to Riker. And it makes sense. I think Shaw's very sensible. Like, he gave it to the previous skipper of the Titan, like someone who would know the ship and possibly many of the crew. Like, it's very possible among the 500 crew, there's a lot of crew that like maybe had served under Riker and kind of like stayed.
And he's also an active Starfleet captain, so he's still getting the emails on proper space dock procedure that retired Admiral Picard is clearly not staying on top of.
Right, exactly. So in the one moment, I love that in the one moment that Riker's like, no, we got to do this, and it's kind of working for them, but Jean-Luc miscalculates the portal device, and his plan would have worked, but like you could see him have his oh shit moment when like Vadic puts the portal in front of the torpedoes. Like, he's like, I did not think of that, and he knew that was it. Like he was so like kind of, and Riker's just so pissed that he actually listened to Jean-Luc, like he's like, I was doing the right thing, like my plan was working, like so there's so many layers there. And I loved the performance. That was like a highlight scene. It is. I do have to say, Dave, like I could see where the confusion comes from. I've seen it like now 5 times, so like I think I've sorted out like a lot of the confusion. But I urge you to watch the scene again if you can, because I think there's a lot of cool cool interplay about the chain of command there. When I saw it from that perspective, I really enjoyed it a lot more.
And honestly, I think this finally delivered on something that was promised in 1987 with Encounter at Farpoint that we never got to see much of, but they kind of set up in that pilot episode tension between Riker and Picard, where there was what we got in the motion picture with Decker and Kirk. It was kind of supposed to be, look, here's a young first officer who's more than capable of commanding the ship himself, and you're the older veteran captain, and sometimes this guy might disagree with you, and he might think we should do B instead of A or whatever. And they never explored that much in TNG. I kind of wish that they would have, but we're getting a cool exploration of it now. So it's like,
it kind of works as a culmination of decades of wanting to argue more with Picard and biting his tongue, and it kind of blew up.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's a good way of framing it.
Also, he's trying, he can see that like Riker's just been amazing in these first 3 episodes, but I feel like Riker's got like the coolest head. He's like been the most like the character I've been relating to the most, and I think it's just like great that it also kind of, to me, reflects all good things. Like we've got that little bit of an edge to Riker that we saw where he was kind of bitter, and he's like, they've created a similar scenario like with Troy and him being on the outs. It's not, in All Good Things, Troy died, so Riker's like really pissed at Jean-Luc about that. But here it's just a different like scenario, but it has that kind of vibe to me. I feel like Riker's giving me a little bit of those All Good Things Riker vibes as well.
It sucks that he loses a family member in every timeline.
Every timeline, yeah, it is true. Like, time's a bitch. Sorry. Sorry for cursing.
Yeah, you're good. Rachel, what did you think of this ending?
I didn't really like it, and I agree with all you're saying, except I have a theory that might be me being naive. I think they might be playing up them fighting to smoke out the saboteur. Because I did think like the turn was like a little more drastic than I like between them.
It felt a little odd to me. You know what that would be like? That would be like in Wrath of Khan when they use the coded transmission to throw Khan off. I'm just kidding, but
it's funny because it actually reminded me of a Voyager thing, like my theory. So you could keep thinking of Wrath of Khan, and I keep thinking of Voyager.
I did seriously bond with Wrath of Khan like almost nothing else when I was like 10.
So maybe, you just remember it super well.
But the interesting thing is, like, if that were the case, there's probably some moment when.
Oh no.
Oh wow! It's just
now we've lost Dave.
We saw Father. I was gonna say it's the lower deckers.
Dave's back. Dave's gonna finish that thought. Dave is gonna finish that thought, and then we're gonna wrap up and do some subspace transmissions. But Dave, what was your thought?
I was just rounding out that notion. I was like, they may have, like, if Rachel's notion was correct, they might have talked about it off camera, like, hey, let's stage a little bit of an incident. But also there could be something that might be fun to go back and look for and see if there's some moment when one of them says something, a little code word or a code phrase to put this in motion. So it'd be fun to look. It'd be fun to check for.
Yeah, I 100% could be that, like, I could be being naive because I don't want my faves fighting. But
I get it. It was tough watching Picard and Beverly fight earlier in the episode. It was stressful because I was like, I really didn't want to pick a side.
I know. I was like, I just want everyone to get along. I love all of you.
Yeah.
You don't have to pick a side.
I think in another in another 7 episodes, all of the surviving TNG cast will all get along and have a nice happy ending with whoever makes it. So.
I don't want to even think about that stuff. I forgot about that.
And then Dave will be like, "This is just like the end of the Wrath of Khan when Spock died."
It's true, and I'll be right.
I'll be right. Got that in Nemesis.
Spock is not the first fictional character to die. Maybe the first Star Trek fictional character. But...
Listen, if somebody dies behind a clear screen and they touch hands, you got to give it to me though.
It seems very unlikely they're going to have, like, a search for whoever dies, so... Or, I jokingly sometimes call Search for Spock retcon the movie, because it's...
That's... Rachel, that's my favorite Star Trek movie of all time, is The Search for Spock.
I enjoy The Search for Spock. It does also exist, basically, to retcon the death of Spock.
Well, they had to destroy the Enterprise to do it, so it felt like a... earned resurrection.
This is fair.
And also David Marcus.
Remember how Father, you and I don't remember if it was Dave also, but you guys were afraid of the whole like David Marcus, Carol Marcus thing. Like, how do you guys feel? How do you guys feel now that you've seen like this, like kind of like the scenario play out?
The acting is so damn good. They made me. We talked about that last week. It's like I was like Shaw in that scene. Like when Shaw like gave up and accepted it. That's how I felt. By the way, let me just the last thing I'll say about Captain Shaw. Seeing Todd
Now you
Stashwick
should talk more.
over the last week on the Star Trek cruise, he is either the first or second most casually hilarious person I've ever met in my life.
Oh wow.
His rival was also on the cruise, Tawny Newsome, who I can't get over just how nice she is. I was like kind of nervous to talk to her because I was like, she's not gonna
I
like
remember.
be as nice and funny and friendly in real life as I think as I want her to be. And no, she totally is. So,
That is one so great to hear. She's so nice to like fans on Twitter.
Yeah, we partied hard last night on the dance floor. It was quite the night for the Star Trek cruise. So that was a blast. And Todd Stashwick was a surprise guest. I didn't know he was going to be on the cruise till I was like on the ship, and they were like, "Hey, on the stage, look, it's Todd Stashwick." Now this was 8 days after his first episode of Picard was released. So with just 8 days, he'd fit right into the fandom. He has Star Trek tattoos on his arm. He's a hard nerd.
What?
He's talking about all these episodes of the original series that he's seen. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And he's
I did not know that.
He's so funny. Like every other sentence is just like the funniest thing you've ever heard, and it always lands. And it's like man, like I hate you. You're so talented. You're so charismatic and genius and funny and nice and nerdy. And yeah, it's just like I hope I can be half as cool as Todd Stashwick someday.
Oh wow.
That's all I got.
Someone's smitten. I love it.
Does anyone have like a final thought on this episode before Dave reads some Subspace transmissions about last week's episode?
This episode, I really enjoyed it, but it mostly made me go, oh, God damn it, I have to wait a week.
Exactly. My thought is similar, which is I just think that like the cliffhangers have been really great, like every episode, because they don't they don't make you feel like, oh man, but they do make you want more. Like you're like, okay, this is a good place to kind of pause for a while. This is like where I would normally like maybe pause the film and go to the restroom or get more popcorn or something like that. Except now I have to wait a week, but that's all right.
I don't think I have any special outro thoughts. Yeah, ready to see where they go. I kind of want them out of the nebula. I'm ready for them to leave the nebula,
Yeah, I'm
or
kinda
at
done
least
with that.
uncover some new, whatever
Dave,
new aspect
all
of
10
it.
episodes are in the nebula.
No,
Like the whole thing.
You've ruined the timeline, Sohail.
They
You
actually, in the last episode, when they have like the funeral, they're gonna get out of the nebula, but they're gonna find out they're actually in a larger nebula, and then Terry's new spin-off show that he's trying to pitch to Paramount Plus is going to be like the escape from that nebula.
Star Trek Nebula.
So,
That's the title
yeah.
of the show.
Actually, they've
Nebulae.
always been in a nebula for all years.
Wait, are you saying the nebula is the Nexus?
Yes. There we go.
It does have that orangey kind of glow to it.
Mhm.
Uh-oh.
Duly noted.
Star Trek Escape from the Nebula, coming to Paramount Plus early 2025. With a cameo of Father Ian Starfleet Boy, because Terry promised us that if he got his show. So
In the next episode, Riker's going to be like, let's try and go to the edge one more time and warp out one more time. Okay, maybe 2 more times.
Dave, last week we talked about Season 3, Episode 2, Disengage, which was funny, because that was the episode that you and I, we were a little reluctant to get on the Picard Season 3 bandwagon, but that was the episode that kind of engaged us to get on there. But what were people on the interwebs saying about Disengage last week?
Yeah, we got some good Subspace transmissions on this one, and as a reminder, it's the episode that I believe revealed Worf, I think revealed Vadic, and confirmed that Jack is Picard's son, as much as that can be confirmed. So here's some of the responses. Discussing Trek says, so far they're doing something that the previous seasons of Picard and Discovery have failed to do, not make us wait the entire season to start answering questions. Giving us steady payoffs is much more satisfying. PJ the Trekkie says, enjoying it, but not as blown away as a lot of fans, and that makes me sad. But it's only 2 episodes in, definitely a fan of Jack, loved a lot of the moments. Overall, something isn't clicking for me, but it's all good. Jill had an interesting comment. Jill from our audience said, it was fine. I think all I needed was a better send-off than Nemesis, and I'm confident that will happen. This is not TNG
Already,
Season
yeah,
8
it's true.
or
No.
even Picard Season 3 for me. It's an 8-hour TNG film wrap-up, which I really needed. Let's see. Anthony Wynn says, I'm enjoying it, but also seeing lots of bits and pieces that seem to be cherry-picked or borrowed from other iterations of Trek. I think my favorite comment came from Ferengi Rules of Acquisition, who says we needed more of the great Ferengi businessman. Let's see. Benjenium says, personally, I've only given a handful of Trek episodes a 10 out of 10, but this was a 10 for me. I was literally screaming and clapping and rolling around in the fetal position on Thursday morning. This is from a guy who never reacts to anything.
I've only given a handful of Star Trek episodes lower than a 10.
This is true.
Let's see.
Did Dave freeze? Dave froze. We don't have his notes. We don't have the transmissions.
Oh,
so
well,
we'll go into
that
the
nebula.
audience.
That nebula's a motherfucker, isn't it?
It's true. Let's see. Let's go into the audience. Or Father, do you think we want to wait for Dave, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts from the audience here.
Back.
We got Dave back. Okay, so
I've returned from the Nexus, but we can call it there. It's good.
Okay, well, just want to give a shout out to all the people who were watching the show live with us. Again, this was a weird show. If this was your first Tex-Trek, but I hope it isn't your last. We're gonna get out of this nebula next week, and we'll have a nice visual presentation. I'll do the Gorn eggs because people like those. I asked for some feedback, and I thank everyone for following that up and telling me that y'all did indeed want the Gorn eggs back. So we'll be sure to include
We're
that.
gonna keep them hatching.
Yeah, anyone who's new to the stream, go watch last week's episodes. You could the week before the first episode.
Yes, 2 weeks
see
ago.
The full experience.
Even that one was a little weird because we ran long. But
dang, like the other thing, I just want to say, Father, are you gonna follow tradition and do a kind of recap stream for the cruise and just share your pictures and stuff like that? Is that happening?
We're totally gonna do that. I'll have a Starfleet Sohel give me the debriefing, and if anyone has any questions for the cruise, then that'll be the time to show up and get those questions answered. So if you do have questions like that, please leave a comment here, or if you have thoughts on this episode, you can reply to my tweets. You can chime your opinions in the Tex-Trek Discord server. And you can also sound off on the Tex-Trek Facebook page, and you can find me on Mastodon, but I never know how to use that. But yeah, hopefully we're on TikTok, but I don't really post a lot there because I don't understand that app either. But Rachel's gonna help me with that. She's a TikTok pro.
Rachel's amazing on TikTok. I follow you. You're awesome.
I'm a TikTok pro. I know what I'm doing occasionally.
Well, that's better than most of us, if we can say occasionally. But like I say, I rarely know what I'm doing. I don't know if that's better.
Father,
or
I've
worse
had
than
a few hits
occasionally,
I've had a few hits on TikTok.
Oh, so you're the pro now, is what you're saying?
No, not at all. I'm just saying I've had a few hits.
Unfortunately,
I made
my
it a Negroni.
videos that I've done really well are not Star Trek videos because TikTok does not want to push my Star Trek videos, and I refuse to stop making them.
My most popular video is me falling and scraping my knees. So yeah, it's
come on, TikTok, give Trek some love. But
my which just happened. My top TikTok video is me ruining the movie The Vow. So
well, be sure to follow Drama Dork on what's your TikTok handle?
It's Dramadork884.
Okay,
so everywhere.
Be sure to follow for some great TikTok content that will occasionally be Star Trek, even though the algorithms won't push that to you like they should.
It probably is that I refuse to have one niche on TikTok. I'm like, no, I have a lot of different interests. I don't want to just do one thing.
There you go. You don't have to be a monolith.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be like me. I only post about Star Trek, but I have a weird, unhealthy obsession that I will be more than happy to indulge in more next week when we talk about Picard Season 3, Episode 4. You can catch us on YouTube live every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central, or listen to us later, wherever you get your podcast. And I think I'm on camera now.
Tomorrow, the
So-
Embergus element. Are you coming? Geek Filter will be there. That's
I'll be flying back, but I'll try to pop up in the live audience. But yeah, everyone go check out Starfleet Sohel for some animated series talk on Saturday afternoons.
Nice.
And until next time, Engineer Sohel.
Oh yes.
And until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Hold on, Starfleet. Here we go. It's not working. It's not clicking. What's going on? Okay. Wrong one. Here we go.
Continuum.
Oh, Father, you done? You got in there. Father was trying to save the.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you, and